Do you remember Snoopy singing the old Charlie Brown song, supper, 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 supper time? Yeah. Well, supper is significant. This may be our most significant meal of the day. But many times we don't remember what we ate for supper. I mean, it's necessary, but it's not significant. I mean, if I ask you, you might not could tell me what you ate for supper on October 17th of last year, or July 21st of the year before, or May 28th of even the year before that. I mean, we just don't remember. I mean, sometimes we remember something significant. I remember one time I was in Paris, France, and got the most amazing chocolate croissant, maybe the most heavenly thing I've ever put in my mouth. I mean, it was really, really good. But usually, supper is insignificant. But there was this one supper that was the initiation of a series of events that Jesus and his disciples went through in this week that we're celebrating now, Holy Week. It was the week of his passion, or the week of the suffering of Jesus. And on this night, when he was having supper, I believe he was having also emotional distress. I believe he knew that their time of walking together and eating together and being together and talking together was coming to a very quick end, even before they would go to bed that very night. They were having a meal that was significant to them because they had this same meal every year. Was the Passover meal. It was a Seder, when there would be different elements around the table and you would sit with people you loved or people you were in a relationship with. And in those moments of sitting, in those moments of significance, they would talk about how their ancestors came out of bondage in Egypt, led by Moses, led by God's Spirit, to come out from under slavery, out from under terroristic conditions, and into a place that they were called to freedom. That took them a while to get all the way to where God wanted them. But the significance was that in an act of grace and in an act of God's mercy, freedom was given to them like that. And so they would sit around the table remembering that night when the angel would pass over the house if the blood of the sacrifice was on the door. And they would have different things at that meal that they would remember. First, it was, the lamb that was slain as a sacrifice. And they would have bitter parsley that they dipped in salt water for tears. And they would have bitter herbs and bitter vegetables to talk about the angst that they were in and the turmoil that they were in slavery. And they would eat a mixture of honey and nuts and grains that was indicative of their building bricks, something that would stick and adhere together, of their work. And that they would also have cups of wine at this meal. And then on top of that, there would be this unleavened bread. And the reason it was unleavened was to indicate that they were in a hurry. They didn't have time for the bread to rise. And all of these things told a story in this meal. And on this night, Jesus has invited his closest disciples to have this meal with him, to find this place that was prepared and have this meal. Now, we have this meal memorialized in Da Vinci's The Last Supper, but maybe it was the First Supper because it was a hinge night. It was a change. And Jesus understood what was going to come out of this night and out of this meal, that the sacrificial system would be done, over with, in a flash at his death. He understood that he was about to go through the agony of tears. He was going to feel the burden of the weight of the slavery of sin for every human that had ever been born and had ever known life or would ever know life. And he was saying, I am going to be the sacrifice. As a matter of fact, at the end of the supper, the story says that he picked up the cup and says, this cup is the new covenant, my commitment to you in my blood. This bread is given as if my body, as my body is going to be given. And it was a very significant supper, because coming out of this, history was forever changed from the inside out, from the spirit to the natural. And we are invited at the beginning of this Holy Week. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be participating tonight in a Seder dinner where we have all of these elements, but we are asked and recognize the moment that is at our table to signify that, wow, something very meaningful happened at this supper. It was not just another supper. It was a supper that initiated the change of human history for every individual that would put faith in the one who is leading the supper, Jesus. As we go through the next 3 days, I hope you'll stay with me and we will see the significance of the week of his suffering that started at the table, having supper. I'm Phil Underwood, and I'm asking you to journey with me this week as we move from life to life. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.